Hi, I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliott.
And you're watching Phase Drive. Welcome back to the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We upload videos at least once a week on video production, music production, home media setups and more. So please subscribe, notifications on to stay updated on our latest videos. So today's video, we're going to be doing another garden cinema setup, but this time we're going to be doing the best possible setup we can. And we've come to Elliott's house because in England you can now socialise in gardens outside. This is legal, I tell you now. So Elliott, why are we doing this garden cinema setup?
So it's my sister's fiance's birthday, and so to treat him, we're going to put on one of his favourite films on the big screen, outdoors, in luxury, as much as it can be.
We're doing proper Instagram vibes here, so
Definitely.
Prepare for that. Now in this video we're going to be going over a few little setups that I think people get wrong, especially with the way they light things. So for instance, making sure to turn off the lights when the film starts, not putting lights next to the screen so you can't see it properly. And Elliott's going to go through a little bit of the sound setup because we've done a bit of trial. Well, I've done a bit of trial and error, and you know your stuff about sort of sound.
I diagnosed an issue.
Yes, exactly. Now I think we're probably going to go with the single speaker setup just for ease of use.
Yeah.
We had talked about stereo setup, but
which is probably not going to work too well outside because a lot of stereo speakers rely on reflections to some degree. You don't want a load of them, but when you're outdoors, they're all going to go, well, out into the abyss, so you're not going to get the proper sound that you want.
So we're going to go for a single bearing giant PA speaker, which I have, and we're going to talk about balanced and unbalanced audio, and Elliott's going to explain it, not me, because I don't know what I'm talking about.
It's not that difficult.
But we have found a solution because there were issues there. So yes, hope you enjoy, and you can see the ultimate affordable budget garden cinema setup just for you on the Phase Drive channel.
Nailed it.
Right, okay, cut to the time lapse. Elliott is in training with camera stuff, so we're trying to kind of, I'm trying to help him. So he's figuring out all the shots.
Yes,
and
a bit of cinematography work.
Yeah, exactly. So he's done a bit before, so we're, you know, all the kind of cool shots, all the cool shots you see. This. I'm just setting. All I've done is that little camera over there. That was us together because Elliott was very insistent
on the framing. We had to move the whole table over, okay? Because it wasn't in the right place. We need the perfect shot. So this is as close as we can get.
Aha!
Ta-da!
Presenting. Okay, so for audio, Elliott's going to explain why in a bit, but for audio we're using this Behringer PA speaker. It's powered and it's got kind of a preamp built in. It's the B1112. I usually use it as a fallback for vocals and stuff, but this time we're going to use it as just one good sized speaker for the projector.
So we're taking the unbalanced 3.5mm jack out of the projector into a line. This is all one cable, and that's unbalanced. So the problem we have with that is that you can pick up a lot more interference, like from your phone or just general noise, and that will come straight through the speaker and be horrible and muddy. So we've got a DI box which converts an unbalanced signal into a balanced signal. So basically, with this cable, unbalanced, you have one copy of the signal. The benefit of a balanced signal is that you have two copies of the signal, which are put out of phase with one another. And basically that means that if any interference that's coming along whilst the signal is in transit, when it's flipped at the other end, so they're both then back in sync, the interference will be opposite of one another, meaning that you eliminate interference, and it also means that you get a much better quality sound. So what we've been encountering with the speaker from the projector is that all the vocals, everything that's on both the left and right channel, are out of phase with one another, cancelling each other out, making a horrible noise. So using a DI box to counter that is a big help.
So for the projector, we're going to be using, of course, the Wimius K1. We've tested this in a few videos now, and it always gets my recommendation. Yes, we could have gone for like an Epson or an Optima, but that's expensive, and the whole point of this is doing a really cool garden cinema on a budget. This is still only about £200 in the UK, and usually you can get £20 or £30 off, so there's a link in the description below, so if you're interested, definitely check that one out. And no, we're not sponsored, I just think it's a good projector. We're going to be using a Blu-ray player rather than the Fire Stick, just because I can never always trust the internet, and it would be kind of rubbish if we're watching something on the big screen and it cuts out, because who wants that? So So I think the film of choice is likely to be good old Thor Ragnarok. And no, we can't show too much of it apart from a few frames, lest we be stricken by copyrights, which we don't want. And then, yes, Elliott's already mentioned we're going to be using line outs into the PA speaker. And the one thing is that we're going to have to wait until about 9 PM because unfortunately, being higher up in the Northern Hemisphere, we get longer days, it's really long days actually, as we get into May and June. So we're going to have to wait until about 9 PM until we can really see things on the screen. So it's not quite dark enough yet, but we have got the projector set up. We've set up the big sound thing on the floor here. We ended up using, for the sake of quality, we ended up using the HDMI extractor. So we ended up using that because Elliott was insistent and he thought the sound was better. I couldn't tell the difference, but I thought I shouldn't tell him. If Elliott's happy, I'm happy.
I'm happy.
Now the main thing, if you look around, you can see we've got the fairy lights on now. Looking very nice and sparkly. So we are going to switch these off when the film starts. Now I often see a lot of people leave them on and whatever, you do you, but I kind of like to be able to see the screen and not be distracted by flashing lights and stuff. And also we just specifically made sure there were no lights actually around the screen because you want to kind of get the best effects. So we're going to switch them off, have full effect, and then they'll be on for sort of any kind of intermissions or, you know, just the kind of as you come in. So the one thing that we did have to do is we had to move the projector really far back. Now because it's a cheaper one, we don't have like a zoom lens on it or anything, and it's not short throw, so it is actually about 4 meters back from the screen, and it meant my seat has to go like right far back, but that's a small sacrifice for having a full size screen. So again, cheaper projectors you will have to have them further back because they don't have any kind of short throw lens or anything. Okay, so we're jumping forward a week or two now. If you couldn't tell, I had a haircut, but weirdly I'm wearing the same shirt. I don't know, go figure. Anyway, we had a really good time watching the film. The setup worked great, and I'm really glad that we did it the way we did it. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get to fully finish the film because in typical English fashion, it started to rain kind of towards the end, and we thought, okay, we better not risk the projector. So we didn't get to watch the full thing, but for the time that we did watch it, it worked fantastically. So just to go over those key points that I mentioned, which I think people get wrong with garden cinema and actually should just be aware of so they have the best experience they can. First things first is to be aware of your projector's brightness capabilities. Again, using these cheaper Amazon ones does mean you're going to have to wait until it really is sunset. Again, as soon as the sun's gone down, it starts to get really dark, it comes into its own and it looks great, but if you're expecting to start the film while the sun's still up a bit, you're probably not going to get a great image experience. Now, secondly is something that I didn't touch on too much, and that is projector position and image keystoning. So you'll have seen a little bit of me using the kind of 4.4D keystone correction to put each corner into the corner of the screen. Now, I think this is the best application for this type of keystone. Now, you will of course get some which are just horizontal and vertical, and then you just do your best to kind of fit that. But the one thing I didn't really mention is that actually it's best to have the image just slightly bigger than the screen, because then you've got the black outline, and so it truly fills the screen. And actually you'll probably find that when you're watching TV, they usually have cropped in a slight little bit anyway. You don't very often watch stuff in true native resolution. Actually, what tends to happen is most players and a lot of TVs will actually crop into a wide mode, which just makes the image slightly bigger, and if you've shot at say 185, you won't get the small black bars on the top and the bottom. So pulling the projector out just a little bit so it's just ever so slightly bigger than the screen, and you get a nice border, I think works well, especially if you want it to truly fill the screen. Now, of course, as I kept saying, one of the big things I think people get wrong a lot is to either have lights or candles or fairy lights shining kind of on the screen, and it defeats the purpose. I'm sure it looks nice on Instagram, but if you're going to do that, at least turn it off when you're going to watch the film. I've seen a lot of videos out there where people don't even switch them off for the film. It's like, well, okay, yeah, but you're missing out on like a better looking image, and for me I want to be immersed regardless of being outside. I mean, you can still have like a fire pit off to one side, but if you're going to have lights right next to the screen and on, I think you're kind of well, I think it just kind of looks a bit bad, but yeah, maybe that's just me. Now, the audio setup that we had isn't necessarily what you have to have. A lot of these projector speakers are surprisingly good, and actually in the previous video I just used the projector speaker and it works pretty well. That being said, if you are in a bigger setup, and actually that was a bigger setup than we've done before, you probably will want a more powerful speaker. Now you can get some Bluetooth ones, or you can get like a reasonable soundbar, but I just found the PA speaker has that bit more power and a bit more EQ control to really get a good sound coming through. But one of the things we did, again I didn't touch on, is that in the Blu-ray settings we actually switched on night surround, and that meant that we could have the volume up and we had dialogue enhancement on, because you'll always find dialogue just gets lost in a lot of sound setups. We had the dialogue enhancement on, we had a little bit of surround compression so we could turn it up a bit more, hear the dialogue, but the sort of really loud action sequences didn't sort of obliterate the neighbours. As we mentioned in the video before, you will need a bit more volume being outside because there's nothing for the sound to sort of reflect off. We did have one wall to the left of us, so that probably helped a little bit. But again, with like stereo, you know, you can do stereo. Don't by all means do it if you want to do it, but you probably won't get the same effect that you would if you were inside. And actually having one really good mono speaker that's got good quality sound that everyone can hear, I think is better than having a really complicated stereo setup which may actually you might not be able to hear as well. And of course, going off that, if you're going to be using a PA speaker rather than just like a 3.5mm in speaker or just something kind of more simplistic, you will need something like a DI box which can down mix to mono. Some of them will have down mixing built in, but again, that speaker, if you're using kind of a PA speaker, they are relying on mixers to feed them the final signal. So having a DI box or like a Behringer mixer, they're actually usually very affordable. Now the DI box I was using, as I put up on the screen, is quite expensive. You don't have to use that. You can use a cheaper Behringer one for 30 or 40 pounds, which should theoretically do the same job, and as Elliott explained, should also eliminate that ground hum. The final thing that I wanted to touch on that we didn't really talk about was viewing angles and position. Now I did mention that we had to have the projector quite far back, about 4 meters, to get that full 120-inch screen, full screen. Unfortunately, that is just the case with a lot of these more budget projectors. They don't have any kind of zoom lens, they don't have any kind of short throw lens or system, so you're going to have it a bit further back. However, what you can do is, as long as you've got kind of a cone shape where the projector, so if you imagine there's the screen, there's the projector, you've got kind of a cone shape, so you can have people situated in front of the projector, but it has to be kind of off at an angle so there's no shadows. So you'll probably find that you need kind of a sort of almost like amphitheatre setup. And again, you can, if you've got the means to have people slightly above each other, then by all means do. Again, this is probably better if you are going to have, if you've got a big garden, you want a lot of people, you can have people quite wide out, because actually the actual viewing angles, because it's not LCD, you could probably sit quite far round to one side and still see it pretty well. And actually the guys, if you saw, who are off to either side, you could still see the screen pretty damn well. Anyway, that's going to about do it for now. I think that's pretty much all the videos we're going to do on garden cinema for the time being. But if we have any more projectors or screens or anything come in, then of course we'll do reviews on that. As always, please be sure to subscribe. We upload new videos at least once a week, and we also have the Phase Cast on Tuesdays as well. So if you like sort of film and TV discussion stuff, then be sure to check out that. And again, once again, thanks to Elliott and his family for being involved in the video, and I shall see you in the next one. Goodbye.